Time for Toki. Okay, I debated about trying to have like a big clock with me because, Toki and time. I can't do that. But I have a Stitch watch that I think I just have like permanently wound to like just before midnight because reasons. I don't know why. I just don't have batteries in the dang thing. It's like I have a timepiece around here somewhere that's not my phone, right? Okay, I have that. Okay, so time to talk about Amatsuki Toki or Kozuki Toki, depending on which way you want to put it. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff about Toki in regards to like her youth, like prior to Odin meeting her, that we don't know that much about. What we do know about her, for off the top, is that she is the wife of the daimyo of Kuri, Kozuki Odin. She is the mother of Momonosuke and Hiyori. And she is a descendant of the Amatsuki family. Amatsuki is one of the other kind of daimyo families of Wano that we are aware of. And Toki is the only member of the family that we have ever actually interacted with, because during the whole rest of the Wano arc, we don't interact with anybody else that meet or interact with anybody else that has the Amatsuki name. We are introduced to the Shimotsuki set in the form of Yasuie and the one that is Zoro's great uncle through the flashbacks, and the other two daimyos, and of course the Kurozumi family. So we're introduced to those families, but we're not really introduced to the Amatsuki family except through Toki. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the stuff in regards to the Amatsuki family when I get to like the other daimyo families a little bit down the line. But for the most part, we don't know that much about like where they were in regards to, where they would have been the daimyos for, although it is kind of assumed that they have probably been wiped out at this point in time, at like the current point in time, probably by Orochi's grandfather is kind of the thought there. But again, I'll delve more into that a bit more when I talk about Orochi himself, and then when I talk about the other daimyo families. So Amatsuki means heavenly moon, which fits because most of the different families within Wano for the different daimyo families and such have moon somewhere in their name, except for Kurozumi, which is like black coal, is like the one that stands out. Which really only seemed to have become a problem within like the last 100 years or so. But we'll see, because we don't know, going back further, and this is just speculation, going back further in the timeline, it is quite possible that the people who were, the Orochi's other ancestors, the previous members of the Kurozumi family, maybe were actually... Kurozumi, sorry. Of the Kurozumi family, may have been more loyal to the Kozuki family, but we're not quite sure about that yet. We'll have to wait and see if we get any more information about that. But as I said, and as we know, Toki is actually a lot technically chronologically older than she actually is said to be. She says that she was born 830 years ago, before the present day. So that was like 810 something, 805 or whatever years ago, when she's like, when she meets Odin and stuff during the Odin flashback. And she is physically 36 years old at her death. But born, 830 years ago. So you can do the math there. She's like 800 years into the, jumped into the future and everything like that when she meets Odin and everything. A bit about her devil fruit. She has the Toki-Toki no Mi, or the time fruit. It is a paramecia, and as are the majority of the devil fruits in the series. We don't know what it looks like yet. I'm picturing it'll be something that looks like a clock, or maybe like a sand dial, or like a sundial, or something along those lines. Would be an interesting way to have the Toki-Toki fruit look. But we'll see what happens with that. And the devil fruit allows her to send herself and others, and probably objects, forward in time. She cannot send anything back in time, but she can send stuff forward in time. And basically, the two ways that we've seen her do this, is she has physically sent herself forward in time multiple times throughout her life. And she also, in one of her last acts, or the last act that she uses with her devil fruit, is she sends Momonosuke along with several of the retainers, several of the scabbards, into the future to protect them from the beast pirates, to protect them from Kaido. And those are like the two main things that we know that she does with her powers. We don't know if she really uses her powers from the time that she meets Odin up until, what happens near the end of the Odin flashback. We don't really know if she uses her powers anymore during that time frame. I don't know why she would need to, but I can't think of a reason why she would have needed to. But depending on how finite she is with her ability, like how practiced she is, maybe she sent herself ahead just like a couple of minutes, or she can choose between like minutes, hours, seconds, hours, minutes, days, weeks, months, and then years, and then decades, depending on stuff. We just know that over the past 800 years or so, since she first, ate her devil fruit and has continued to move forward in time, she has jumped ahead several different times. We just don't know exactly how many. And we do not know the current location of the, new version of this devil fruit, the newest incarnation of this devil fruit. I know that there were lots of theories that, Toki was going to appear after the Battle of Onigashima so she can see her children one more time. Or that maybe she, jumped ahead further into the future or something like that, in order to prevent Orochi and Kaido from getting their hands on this devil fruit. But I would point out the fact of I don't know if Orochi and Kaido knew that she had a devil fruit to begin with. B, even if they did know she had a devil fruit, it may not have been, because I don't think Kanjuro found out about it until she told them. It was just I'm going to send you guys into the future. And at that time, 20 years ago, Kanjuro didn't have the chance to send that message off to Orochi. And probably by the time he got, once they jumped ahead, he could have sent part of that in one of the messages that, they are back. The Kozukis are back, we're in the future. We got sent to the future, blah, 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 blah. This is what's going on. So that's a possibility, but I'm not exactly sure on that one. And then there is, of course, the whole setup of, even if Orochi got his hands on the devil fruit, he himself can't eat it. Kaido can't eat it. Most of Kaido's forces can't eat it because they all have devil fruits, either actual ones or artificial ones anyway, so they wouldn't have been able to eat it. And Kaido's not going to trust some random lackey that's a waiter with the power of this devil fruit, even if they still have it. And even if they still have said devil fruit, I don't know. I just had the thought, and this kind of goes into something that I might touch on again when I get to what Toki's legacy or post-mortem type is that we know that Toki dies after she, sends Momonosuke and the Scabbards into the future and sends Hiyori off with Kawamatsu and everything, which I'm jumping ahead of it here. But we know that she does that, and then she goes and she delivers her prophecy at the Torii Gate to the citizens of Wano about, you're the moon, unaware of the dawn and everything, and I'll get to that later. And that she is killed there by one of Kaido's lackeys. By one of the random beast pirates that's there, and she's killed. And it is the possibility that maybe her devil fruit ended up somewhere, and I was going to make the comment of maybe Yamato found it, and maybe Yamato figured out that it was a devil fruit but didn't want to eat it at the time, and then hid it away from Kaido. so that way Kaido couldn't find it. But then that would be kind of silly if like Yamato hasn't at least brought that up to Momonosuke at this point in time. Or at the very least, if Yamato does happen to know where it is, he hasn't brought it up yet, because it may not have been something that's been brought up. Or he's like, well, yeah, I found a devil fruit when I was like a kid, when after I found the journal, after I found your father's journal, because like Toki's the one that threw it out of the castle when it was burning, and Yamato found the journal in the river. And, if Yamato found the devil fruit and then, like, hid it to prevent Kaido or Orochi from getting their hands on it, we don't know where it is. And the devil fruit itself may not have even reincarnated within the borders of Wano. It may have reincarnated somewhere else in the world, wherever there was, like, some other compatible fruits, or try to get closer to someone else who was, like, a good match for it, or something like that. We don't know that. We don't know exactly if that's the case. And going actually into Toki, into her history. So we don't know that much about, her childhood. As I said, we know that she is a member of the Yamatsuki family, and that at some point in time they were like a branch family to the Yamatsuki daimyo family. But Toki herself was not born in Wano. She was born outside of Wano during the Void Century. And it's kind of assumed that she knows something about Joy Boy and Zunesha and the poneglyphs and that type of thing. And she knows some of this information. She doesn't know everything, because she may have been sent forward in time before the whole plan had been enacted. It's just, we're going to give you this devil fruit. It's the Toki-Toki no Mi. It will allow you to travel forward in time. Continue to try to travel forward in time until you find a way to be able to get to Wano and everything, and then eventually, that leads to when she meets Odin and everything. But there is, theories that, like, maybe she knows some of what happened during the Void Century, but she doesn't know everything. As I said, she was born 830 years ago, and we don't know exactly how old she was when she started jumping forward in time. She may have been a child, or she may have only been, like, a preteen or barely a teenager when she started jumping forward in time, when she got the devil fruit and started jumping forward in time. And it may have been a task given to her by her family, who may have been associated with Joy Boy and the Great Kingdom and everything, but it may also have been a task that she just took upon herself, regardless of whatever her connection is. I know that there's lots of theories out there that, like, maybe Toki was connected, like, she was part of Joy Boy's crew in the past, but, like, given how young Toki is when, given how young Toki is when, Odin meets her, she's, like, 20, because Momonosuke's 8, and they were married for, like, 2 years before Momonosuke was born, or like a year and a half or something like that, short time before Momonosuke was born. And so she wouldn't have been very old to be on, Joy Boy's crew in that case. But then again, it's, it's like Nami's 20 now, so that's not that big of a deal. Luffy isn't even 20 yet, give or take. Same thing with, like, Usopp, and, Chopper's not even, Chopper's not even, 19 yet, depending on, what time of year it is, where in the year it is exactly, via calendar time frame. But, there's questions with that. But we just know that she was given the devil fruit, and she then spent part of her life traveling forward in time, jumping ahead, so many years, and then, like, maybe finding allies or finding ways to, find out what was going on in the world and be like, okay, well, this is not a good time to be here, so I'm going to move ahead again. She may have saved a lot of lives during this time frame, found people, sent them forward in time with her, or something like that, got them to a safer place, or different things along those lines. That's a little bit left up for debate, but we just don't know. Probably at some point in time when we do finally get, like, the Void Century flashback, we'll probably see Toki, younger Toki, and see her, like, maybe given this mission or something like that. We'll see what happens with that. but then going into when she finally meets Odin. So we find Toki 30 years ago, before 30 years before the present timeline, and she is on this island, and she is being attacked by or cornered, I should say, by Karma and his crew. Karma is a pirate that later on will end up actually being part of Whitebeard's fleet, part of Whitebeard's allies and everything like that. But at this point in time, Karma is not a nice person. He's trying to capture her so that way he can sell her, because he's a human trafficker at that point in time. And he's trying to tell her that, oh, I can take you to Wano country, but that's not his intention. And she's screaming, she's calling for help and everything. And she does have a sword. I don't know if we ever end up finding out whether or not her sword has a name, but she has a sword. Also, we don't know what happened to that sword. Probably got destroyed, unfortunately. But we see that she, tries to defend herself, and we see her trying to activate her devil fruit power, because she's just like, oh, this is not a good place for me to be right now. I'm just gonna, jump forward and, forward in time, couple of hours, probably not some hours, but like a couple of months or a year or something like that. And, she's getting ready to activate her power, and then out of the water comes Odin, very bloated and swollen and everything else like that from like being beaten by the waves and everything like that of the sea for the past 3 days prior, while he was trying to hang on to the chain on the back of the Moby Dick to try to like win the challenge to be part of the Whitebeard pirates that Whitebeard gave him. And Odin pops up out of the water, and he's just like all swollen and bruised and beaten, but huge. And the pirates mistake him for like a sea demon as he like walks ashore, and they're just like terrified and they run off. And then Odin just like collapses and faints, and then Toki kind of like treats his wounds, and then the next day they then confront Karma again because Karma came back, and they Odin takes care of Karma, or tries to defeat Karma, and then like just Whitebeard shows up and really just takes care of Karma and sends him and his crew just gone. And at this point in time, Whitebeard happier invites Odin to actually be aboard his ship and be one of his crew members and everything else like that, because Odin, chose to go to try to help Toki over trying to, finish this, finish this trial or whatever. He chose to go and protect Toki instead. And Whitebeard's like, yeah, I'd rather have that on my crew than your selfish ass. Who just wants to leave the country you're in. And so, we get introductions done, and Toki explains that, oh, I'm trying to get to Wano. And they're like, yeah, Odin's like, yeah, we just kind of came from there. I'm from there, actually. I'm Kozuki, Odin, and she's like, oh, I know the Kozuki family. Maybe she knows the Kozuki family. I don't know, or knew the Kozuki family at the time. And so it's just like, oh, well, there's this, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, oh. And then eventually she reveals to them that, oh, well, I have a devil fruit, and I'm actually like from 800 years in the past, and I've been traveling forward into the future. I wonder if to demonstrate her devil fruit power, she just was like, okay, just activates her power, and then she just jumps a minute into the future, 30 seconds into the future, just to show them that she has the power. And they're like, oh, okay, that was interesting type of a thing. So there's that concept that maybe she demonstrated something that shows that she has this power. And she ends up, during this time frame, what ends up happening is, of course, her and Odin end up falling in love, and we see Marco and the others are just they're so cute together. They're shipping them already. So it's Toki and Odin eventually fall in love pretty quickly, and then they end up getting married. And then during the second year of their marriage is when they have Momonosuke. And they're all overjoyed. Toki is so happy. She's very happy with her husband. She has her friends on the Moby Dick that are her crew and her family at this point in time. And so Toki's pretty happy, and like she's made the comment to Odin of just like, I've been traveling forward in time so much that it's just like at this point in time, I'm just happy to have found people that I can be around and that I'm safe with and welcome among and everything like that. So, so they're doing fine at that point in time. And what ends up happening is Toki ends up, so it's just like all of that's going on. They're having all of these fun adventures as they travel all around and go all of these different new and fun islands and everything. And then 2 years after Momonosuke is born, they then have Kozuki Hiyori. And that result, now they have a son and they have a daughter. And then it's like within a few months within months after Hiyori's birth is like when they meet Roger. And because it's just like, I was looking at the timeline of this, I'm like, Hiyori is 26 years old. 26 years ago is when Roger and Whitebeard have like their crews clash on the unnamed island. And then like Odin and his family go with Roger. And like Toki Hiyori is just like little baby at this point in time. So I just yeah. And what happens is, then, they have the big encounter that happens with, Roger and everything. And pretty much everybody on the crew, on the Whitebeard crew, is probably involved with like fighting against Roger and his crew. Except for, like, Toki and now their 2 children, and now, like, Momonosuke and Hiyori, because Momonosuke is, like, a toddler, and Hiyori is, like, a newborn. So, yeah, Toki is probably still recovering from giving birth. Then again, well, okay. Nothing against this, but, like, Toki isn't necessarily a fighter. She is not that type of a person. She is not that type of a combatant. I'm sure she can fight. We see her have a sword at multiple points in times because she has a katana that she keeps with her at various points throughout her journey and everything. But whether or not she actually, she may have done some like training with like some of the people that are on, Whitebeard's crew, and like with Odin, and maybe some stuff even on like Roger's crew later on. But we don't see her doing really any fighting because that's not really where her prowess lands. That's not her thing. And it's not like she was not like the stuff between the Roger and the Whitebeard pirates is not like fights to the death, a fight for your life or anything like that. It's a skirmish to just kind of see how strong they've both gotten, and then it turns into just like a peaceful thing. So, and we don't actually see Toki during this time frame. We see her like at the end of it after Roger has like shown Odin and Whitebeard like the poneglyphs, and it's just like, hey, you can read these. And Odin's like, yeah, I can. This is what it says or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I read this. This stuff is in my homeland or whatever. This knowledge of reading these is like passed down through my family type of thing. And so it's just like a bunch of that stuff. And then like it's decided that Odin is going to go with Roger for a year, so that way Roger can go and get what he needs to find all of the different poneglyphs and find the road poneglyphs and everything, and then find his way to Laugh-Tale, or what will become Laugh-Tale. And so it's just like all of that conversation is happening over there. Toki's somewhere still like on the Moby Dick, like taking care of Hiyori and Momonosuke, and maybe like watching the fighting, but is like not involved in the fighting. But then it's just like at the same time, somewhere else in the New World, you have Big Mom, who is like giving birth and is probably very heavily pregnant at various points in time while she is fighting and everything else like that. But that's the difference between them. Big Mom is a freaking fighter, and she is like a tank, and she is just, all of that stuff. She is, very powerful in that regard. And she has like her homies that she can use to help fight and to help protect her and everything else like that. And, she also just scare the crap out of her opponents and use her soul focus on them and rip out their lifespans if she, needs to in order to protect herself or whatever. And then you have Toki, on the other hand, who is not a she is not a combatant. That is not what Toki is. So there's a difference there. And, it doesn't make Big Mom any more than Toki. It doesn't make Toki any better, any better than Big Mom or anything else in those lines. It's just, those are just the types of people they are. Toki's intention is not to fight. Big Mom's is fight and be strong and everything else like that. And have like 60, 70, 80 something kids. Again and again and again. For like a whole chunk of your life. Whatever the number was. So Toki's just kind of watching this stuff is happening, and then probably later on she's like gets to kind of like interact with some of them, because like she'll probably say goodbye to the the Whitebeard crew and everything else like that, and Izo stays with the Whitebeard pirates and everything, and then they Toki and Oden and Hiyori and Momonosuke now join the Roger pirates. They they board the Oro Jackson, and then they are part of this journey that Oden is taking with Roger to help Roger to find all of, the poneglyphs and everything like that. And we see them that, they go to Skypiea, they go to Jaya, they go to Fishman Island and everything else like that. And then sometime after they left Fishman Island, Toki became ill. And because of just this stress had finally like caught up with her body after so long during her journey and everything. Her stress had caught up with everything. Had finally caught up with her. And Oden is like, well, Toki cannot continue on this journey right now. And she is like looking at Oden and is like, you better the frick continue this journey. You can take me back to Wano along with the kids, and that's fine. And she is like, you better still continue this journey or I will frickin' divorce you. Everything. So they take Toki back to Wano. They take Toki to Wano, which is where she'd been trying to get to for so long. But they take her to Wano and they leave her there along with their 2 children, and Inarashi and Nekomamushi go with them as well. Go with them because like Toki and the children are familiar with Inu and Neko, but they're not familiar with the rest of the retainers. So they are taken to Wano, and while they're there, Oden goes and gets what he needs for like the other road poneglyph, gets that information, and then comes back after he, introduces Toki to Kinemon and the other scabbards, or the other future scabbards that are there, the retainers, and Toki and the children and everything else like that. And then Oden goes off and does the rest of that journey with Roger. During the time frame between when Toki returns and when Oden returns, which is about half a year later or so, or sometime later, give or take, between them finding Laugh-Tale and then eventually, Roger breaking up the crew and everything else like that, and then bringing Oden back and all of that. So what ends up happening is, well, Toki is in Wano. She's, she gets to meet and get to know the other scabbards that she's probably heard about from Oden and from, Inu and Neko and Izo and stuff like that. Heard about them and everything else. And she gets to meet them. She introduces them to her 2 children, Momonosuke, who's like 3-ish, not quite 4, but like 3-ish. And then like Hiyori, who is like still like probably not even quite a year old at this point in time. Is, doing those introductions and everything else like that. And what Toki actually ends up doing is she ends up, I'm assuming, telling the citizens of Korea, because like Oden was their daimyo and he just kind of up and left them. Well, he didn't kind of up and left them. He just straight up and left them to go on an adventure out in the wide, wide world with the pirates, with the boat shaped like a whale. And she's like telling them that, Oden is on this great journey and he has become so much better and he will become stronger so he can protect you, and he is doing this for the country and everything else like that. And via whatever else it is that, like, Toki is telling the citizens, that is enough for them to have more faith in Odin at that point in time and keep their spirits up. Because he's been gone for several years at this point in time, like 5-something years at this point in time. And what happens is that shortly before Odin returns is actually when Curry Castle is attacked. And what happened was the Beast Pirates attacked the castle because they had heard that Odin's wife and children had returned, and their intention was to try to kill Momonosuke and Hiyori because, probably on like Orochi's orders, because they are a threat to Orochi's role as, his position as, shogun. And what ends up happening is during this time frame, there's this attack that happens, and then like some of the scabbards go to try to deal with Orochi in the capital, and then like the Beast Pirates are driven away by like Kawamatsu and Inarashi, but in the process, Toki ends up getting injured and takes an arrow to the leg that ends up leaving a scar on her in her attempt to protect Momonosuke. She is successful because Momonosuke is not actually harmed when everything happens, but she's still injured in the process, and she ends up healing and she ends up being fine. She just has a scar. And then we have it when Odin actually returns to Wano, and he's happily reunited with, Toki and their children and everything. And then he finds out what happened. He finds out that they had tried to attack his son, and that Toki had been injured in the process, and that results in him just like charging towards the flower capital. And of course, when he returns, he has failed to kill Orochi, and now he must dance naked in the street once a week, every week, for the next 5 years. Make a fool of himself and not explain it. He doesn't explain it to anyone. He doesn't even explain it to Toki. And he ends up asking her at one point in time, does she still love him, even though he's been acting like a fool and everything else for like the last 5 years or so. And Toki's like, of course I still love you, that you're still the man I married, and I'm sure that you're doing this for a good reason. Lord knows if I know what it is, but you're doing this for a good reason. Lord knows why you won't tell me, but you're doing this for a good reason. And so that's kind of what happens. And then that's, kind of how the next 5 years goes. And then it gets to the moment where it is now time where Odin and the scabbards all go off to fight Kaido. And he gives Toki a letter beforehand. And they head off with, he heads off with the scabbards and everything to go and try to, defeat Orochi and defeat Kaido and everything else. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen. What does end up happening, though, is that we do know that Shimotsuki Yasu does show up with his men to try to help guard Toki and Odin Castle and such, so that way they are at least safer should Kaido's men or Orochi's men show up. They are at least safer in this regard. And, they hear that Odin and the scabbards have been defeated and captured, and Toki visits him in, at the prison gallery, and she gets his 2 swords. She gets Enma and Ame no Habakiri from him. Why the heck they let him still have his swords while he is in prison, I have no idea, but they needed a way to get the swords so that way the swords are still available for, Hiyori to give, to give Zoro Enma. And, and then, Toki takes the blades, and she takes them and she hides them somewhere. It's never 100%. I mean, like, where Toki puts them, we don't know. And then some point over the next 20 years, the swords are eventually found by Tenguyama, but by Tenguyama Hutetsu / Sukiyaki, and eventually, yes, Momonosuke has Ame no Habakiri, and Hiyori gave Enma to Zoro in exchange to have Shusui returned to Wano. So we know where those swords end up. We don't know exactly how they ended up in those places over the last 20 years, but that's where they ended up. But Toki takes the swords and does whatever. And tells he's like, pass these to our children. And then on the day of the execution, we see Toki is she's kind of acting like things are semi-normal, but Momonosuke is also just very, he is concerned as to, like, why would there be a danger to my life, mother, and everything. And she explains that it is that one day that he would lead Wano, that it is his destiny to lead Wano. And what ends up happening is, of course, the legendary hour happens with, Oden and the scabbards and the pot of boiling oil and everything else like that. All of that happens. And then when that is done, when the scabbards make their, when Toki receives news that Oden is dead, she reads the letter that he left her, and then she tears it up and just throws the pieces into the wind. We don't know exactly what was written on the letter. That has never been 100% explained, I think. I don't remember that being 100% explained, but supposedly it's basically just like, this is kind of what we found at Laugh Tale, what I read about the true history, what you have been looking for. And I think at some point in time, I know that the theory at least was brought up that, like, well, why didn't Roger just have Toki, like, send all of them ahead in time 20 years? And I'm like, well, then the part of the world would be very different 20 years ahead of time, because, like, Roger wouldn't have been there to, like, activate this great pirate era and everything else like that. So things wouldn't be where they needed to be necessarily. But Toki reads the letter, and Toki may have read what was written in the journal anyway, because she seems to know stuff beyond just, whatever she would know from reading the letter, and also just, like, whatever she would know from her time before she started jumping forward in time, and, like, just getting other information. And depending on stuff, since we don't know exactly how long 100% she's been jumping forward in time, like when she got her devil fruit and started on her journey, that may have been several years, and she may have found lots of other information and, like, pieced stuff together herself, because Toki does seem very smart. But what ends up happening is, of course, they finally get to the moment where, Oden is dead, and the castle is set ablaze, and Kaido shows up. Now, in the anime, they do have a scene where Toki tries to defend her children with a sword, but Kaido just, knocks her away and knocks her into one of the walls. So she's fine. Or she's knocked out or whatever in that time frame. And then, this is where we have the moment where, Kaido is, holding Momonosuke by his neck over the edge of Curry Castle, which is why, of course, Momonosuke has that fear of heights, which I don't blame him in the slightest in that regard, given the circumstances as to what is going on. But, Kaido doesn't kill Momonosuke because at the time Momonosuke is a coward, and Kaido does not view him as a threat at that point in time because he's not, he's too scared and everything. And, then what happens is, of course, Kaido leaves. The castle has been set ablaze anyway. And several of the scabbards, Kinemon, Kanjuro, Raizo, and Kikunojo, along with Kawamatsu, show up. The other ones all end up getting scattered, obviously, as we know, and Inarashi and Nekomamushi make their way back to, Zo eventually, and, like, all of that stuff. And what happens is they arrive in the castle, and, everything is burning, and Toki, well, she is still, she is defending her children, of course, she is protecting them, she is also kind of staying fairly calm. And she, like, tells the scabbards that are there, here's what you are going to do. You four, Kinemon, Kanjuro, Raizo, and Okiku, or Kikunojo, are going to take Momonosuke, and I am going to send all of you forward into the future 20 years. Hiyori is going to go with Kawamatsu, and she is going to stay here. as in like stay in Wano and like grow up normally. And all of them are very, very reluctant to do this because like neither of the children want to leave their mother, which is very obvious and very understandable. But they are just, neither child wants to lose their mother. They just lost their father. Their home is burning around them, and everything is just going horrible at this point in time. And what ends up happening is Toki is able to convince the Scabbards and convince Momonosuke to be brave, and that that you can be brave, you must be brave, that this is your role, that someday that you will fulfill your role as the new head of the Kozuki family and as the rightful shogun of Wano and everything else like that, and you will fulfill this role, and you are brave. And and we see this, and I'll talk about this more when I talk about Momonosuke down the line. Which Momonosuke and Hiyori are going to be some of like the last videos that I do for this series, simply because they're the more current characters. But what ends up happening is they go. Toki says goodbye to her children. She sends Momonosuke and those four into the future with her powers, and then Kawamatsu takes Hiyori and he dives out of the castle, and they dives and takes her somewhere safe. And then Toki takes Oden's journal and she throws that out of the castle so it doesn't burn. We know that Yamato ends up finding said journal, but we don't know the full context of that, but it's pretty assumed that it's Toki that like throws it out of the castle so it doesn't burn, which is pretty similar to what happens for the books in Ohara for the burning tree, that like that knowledge in the tree is like chucked out of the tree and tossed into the lake next to the tree. And those books were then saved by the giants. And for what happens with this is, the castle is burning, and there's the, Oden's journal that has so much, knowledge and information in it and everything in his life story. And Toki tosses that out, and that is found by Yamato. And Yamato then, that is Yamato's Bible and what inspires him for the next 20 years and everything. So that's what happens there. Then we get to Toki's last acts, or her last act. And what she does is she gets one of the horses and she rides out of the castle to Bakura town, and she goes to the torii gate that's there. She's being shot at with arrows and guns and everything. And she gets there and she's in front of the people with like the burning castle behind her, silhouetting her, and she gives her prophecy, like the moon, you are ignorant of the dawn. If there is one ardent wish that must be fulfilled, it will be when 9 shadows are cast, woven together through 20 years of moonlit nights. Only then shall you understand the radiance of the dawn. And she's giving her prophecy, and I was like, okay, how did she come up with this prophecy? Because Toki herself is not prophetic. We know that there's like stuff that like she probably read, stuff that was written in Oden's letter, so that might be part of this. And Oden's like, okay, well, it's been this long since that happened, and this is what happened with Shirahoshi, with what Charlie told us and everything else like that for the Mermaid Princess and this other stuff and all of this other stuff. So he's just like, maybe Oden like pieced it together, and that was what he told her in the letter. And she's like, okay, we're gonna turn this. Okay, I need to make this rhyme. Okay, that'll work. And then that's like the prophecy that she gives, and like sent, and and those are her final words. And then while she's doing this, she ends up being shot at, by several of Kaido's men, and she dies. She collapses on the ground and she's bleeding out, and she dies. Which is more slightly confirmed in the anime than it is in the manga, but like the anime pretty much confirms that, she died. And then of course kind of, her legacy that she gives is the prophecy. And it is sending Momonosuke and those 4 conjurers and such, sending them into the future. And then of course Hiyori is, with Kawamatsu, and then eventually with Denjiro as, Koshiro and everything, and all of that stuff. So Toki Toki's prophecy for 20 years was like a nursery rhyme that terrified the crap out of Orochi, which is hilarious. That's just funny. And then it's also this, it's this prophecy that kind of gives the citizens of Wano hope. And it gives them this hope. And yes, there's many, many of them that do not live to see the prophecy fulfilled, that suffer through these 20 years of moonlit nights and everything else like that, waiting for the sun, waiting for this new dawn to come. And yes, there is many of them that die in the process, unfortunately, because of Orochi and Kaido's actions and everything. And eventually, the prophecy comes true, and that is what happens on the night of the Fire Festival, where, for the past 20 years for the Fire Festival, the citizens have been celebrating, and, it's this one night of freedom from Kaido and from Orochi and everything, and I don't remember if this is something that they show in the manga, but it's definitely something that they throw in the anime that I love, because, there's, the giant balloon that looks like Odin, and then there's the balloon that they make, or the float that they make, that looks like Toki giving her prophecy. And then, of course, the 9 shadows at the end of it are, it's supposedly that they think that the 9 shadows are going to be like the 9 red scabbards arriving with Momonosuke. And of course, there are 9 shadows. It's not the 9 red scabbards, though. There's 6 of them. But then there's also Hiyori and Momonosuke, and then also Shinobu, because, Ashura dies, unfortunately, as does Izo, and then Kanjuro is, of course, a traitor. And, of course, so Toki's prophecy is, for the most part, fulfilled when Momonosuke and the others arrive, and, Orochi, Kaido is defeated by Luffy, and Orochi is beheaded by, Denjiro for the final time, and ending these horrible reigns, and allowing Wano to end its suffering of, moonlit nights, of, these horrible 20 years of moonlit nights. And Toki's prophecy is fulfilled. And now Momonosuke is shogun, and Wano is starting to rebuild itself. We're kind of seeing that with, Yamato's cover story and everything, even with people being kidnapped. Wano is being rebuilt. And as I said, we'll probably get more of Toki when we get the flashback for the Void Century and everything else like that. Might get more information on Toki, and if that ends up being the case, then there might be another video that will be an addition to this once we get some more of that information, and that type of a thing. But that's kind of what I have here. I did want to point out that of course Toki for Toki itself is also the name of another bird name, the way that there's lots of characters and, female characters in One Piece that are named after birds, Kuina is named after a bird, Suru, Otsuru, Tashigi, Kujaku, Toki is another one that is named after a bird. And of course, Toki is also kind of the word for time, is one of the other setups in it, because that's the reference to her devil fruit. And to all that we are aware of for Roger's crew, Toki is the only female member that has ever been a part of Roger's crew. Hiyori doesn't count, she's a baby. Momonosuke and Hiyori do not count as being members of Whitebeard's crew or being members of Kaido's crew, because they are babies. They are a toddler and a baby. They have no choice in this matter. They are with their parents. But yeah, Toki is the only female member of the Roger Pirates that we are aware of. That may at some point in time get not necessarily retconned, because we know the crew that was there when they went to Laugh Tale, but we don't know if there was ever anything else in regards to prior members of the crew that may have been female that have left before they went to Laugh Tale, or left before stuff happened, before Roger became the king of the pirates and everything. But that's what we have for Toki. I believe the next 2 videos for this series are going to be about Orochi, because there's enough that happens with Orochi that he's going to get 2 videos. I technically could have done like 2 here for Toki, but I'm like, there'll probably end up being another video about Toki later on down the line if we get more information about, you know, what happened to her in the Void Century and everything else like that. But that's what I have here. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye!